What is good, everyone? Welcome to this video. I hope you are doing amazing today. I'm Charlie from Conscious Creation, and in this video I would like to share with you 3 very powerful signs that you might be experiencing a spiritual awakening. And I'm also going to share with you a bit about my own awakening as well. My spiritual awakening began in the beginning of 2018, and I remember I was sitting at my desk at work. I was working in a gym at the time, and I was reading this article, and something about spirituality just popped out of the page. And I remember this distinct feeling of energy running up my spine and into my brain. And to this day, I'm still convinced that was a Kundalini awakening, because for about 2 months, I was in this blissed out state. I remember the town I was living in at the time is I started to buy all these spiritual books, and I would go to a local park and I would sit on the bench for hours just reading these books, and I would start meditating a lot every single day. And this was a really enjoyable experience to me. But I soon found along my journey of this spiritual awakening that it all wasn't bliss and joy, and things started to become quite uncomfortable for me. And the reason for that is because as we grow up, we are conditioned, we are indoctrinated, we are put into a box, that of an ego structure of how we view the world and how we should view ourselves. And when you go through this spiritual awakening, it's one of the biggest shifts in identity that you will ever experience, because this ego box starts to dismantle. And to the ego, this is very uncomfortable, because the ego loves familiarity. It likes things that are safe and that are known. So as you go through this process of the ego starting to fade away more and more, it can be a very uncomfortable process. But as we go through this process, we start to have these epiphanies. And you eventually get to an epiphany where you realize that you are this multi-dimensional spiritual being having a temporary human experience. Now, if this is the first time that you've ever heard someone tell you that you are a multi-dimensional spiritual being living a temporary human experience, you're probably going to be thinking, what is this guy talking about? But as you go through this process of the spiritual awakening, is you start to realize that you exist on different dimensions, in different realities, and that you are this vast spiritual being. If you look at the work of Bashar, who's a very well-known channeler, he explains that the part of us that comes into the human form as this vast spiritual being is about the size of a thumbnail. So we are in fact these vast spiritual beings. And this is a big shift in your identity, because you start to view yourself in a very different way, because we have been taught to view ourselves purely through that of the mind and purely through that of the body. This is who we are at our core, and that's the end of it. But when you start to realize that you are this spiritual being, is the identity changes, and you start to change how you view yourself. Therefore, the things that you attract in your life, because shifting your identity, shifting who you are being, is the number one thing to attract the things that you want in your life. And because you now view yourself in this different light, you start to realize that your natural state as a spiritual being is one of wellness, abundance. This is your birthright. This is who you are as this being. And the idea of lack, that is actually an illusion. And the more you align with this spiritual aspect of yourself, that's going to help you attract a life that is of well-being and abundance. So I'm going to share with you 3 very powerful signs that you might be going through a spiritual awakening. The first sign is you start to question things in your reality. And these aren't just little questions. These are big questions. Why are we here? What's the purpose in all that is going on? Is this really all there is to reality? As you start to ask these types of questions, is you open the door to new ways of thinking, and this allows this spiritual journey to start unfolding. And as you go on this spiritual journey as well, is you start to become more open to the modalities of spirituality, things like crystals, meditation, the law of attraction. And when I say spirituality. We are all spiritual beings. That's who we are at our core. So you can't be spiritual and not spiritual, because we all are. But the idea of being called spiritual is just simply that you are becoming more aware of this aspect of yourself. The second sign that you are going through a spiritual awakening is that you want to spend more time alone and away from people. You want to go through this hermit phase, and this is because it's like you're shedding those layers within yourself. It's like when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. It goes through the shedding of these layers, and it can be very uncomfortable. And you often ask yourself, why am I the only one who's going through this? And it is one of those things on the spiritual journey that you need to go through by yourself. Yes, it's great to have help and have teachers, but you're the one who does the inner work. And it can seem like no one else around you is going through this stuff. But as you go through this journey and you start to shed these layers and you do the inner work and you start to grow spiritually, you start to change your vibration, your vibratory frequency. And because of this, this is why it can be such a blessing, because you then start to attract different things in your life, new types of people, new types of relationships. Maybe you start to get drawn to a new job, a new type of career. For me, I was a personal trainer for a long time, and I used to love training clients. I had a lot of enthusiasm for it. But when I started my spiritual journey, I started to notice that it was harder and harder for me to do this work specifically, and it became more of a chore. I still like doing it every now and then, but I was starting to get pulled to these different things that started to resonate with me at a much deeper level, and I actually started to enjoy these things much more than I have done anything else. The third sign that you may be experiencing a spiritual awakening is you start to become more aware of the synchronicities in your life. Things like the triple numbers or certain types of animals and their meanings, even things like a butterfly flying into your room and landing next to you. But as you go through this spiritual awakening, one of the biggest shifts that you go through is to realize that everything outside of you is happening as a result of what is happening within you. Even when you start to create things that are unwanted or what seem unwanted to you, because we are attracting every little thing in our life. And you may ask yourself, well, why would I create that? Why would I want to attract that in my life? What's the benefit? But we do it because there's always a deep sense of learning or benefit from actually going through something that we might initially see as a negative. But once you start to realize that everything outside of you is simply because of what's happening within you, this makes you take a closer look at things like your thoughts and your emotions, because you realize that those are the things attracting the things that come into your life. So you want to be more aware of your thoughts, more aware of your emotions. Can I direct them in a certain way? Can I become more of the observer of them? So thank you for watching. Hope this information has helped you. Peace. Take care.